Well, thank you all for coming on such a busy day. We appreciate that you're here, so I won't waste any more of your time. The Director General, Francis Gurry, will make some opening remarks. We also have Carsten Fink, our Chief Economist, with us, and Erik Wilbers, the Director of the Arbitration and Mediation Center. So, Director General, thank you.
Thank you, Sama. Ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. Thank you very much for coming. As Sama said, very busy day for you, and we appreciate that you give us some attention. So, as you know, this morning we are unveiling the results of what we call our global systems. So it's the Patent Cooperation Treaty for International Patent Applications, the Madrid System for International Trademark Applications, the Hague System for International Design Applications, and the WIPO Arbitration and Mediation Center for domain name disputes and general intellectual property disputes between companies or private parties. And these systems collectively constitute the revenue basis of the organization and are, I'd say, widely used throughout the world. And they're good indicators of international intellectual property activity, so intellectual property activity on a global scale. And one other word about that, of course, the systems are at different stages of maturity. So when you look at the PCT, you see that it captures well in excess of 90% of GDP. The countries that are party to it account for well in excess of 90% of GDP, 90% of world population, and so forth. So it's a very good indicator. The Madrid system is less widely spread in scope. So the PCT, 150 in round terms, members. The Madrid system is now about 92 contracting parties, but one of those contracting parties is the African Intellectual Property Organization, which covers 17 countries, so it's about 110 countries. And the Hague system, again, even less mature. It covers only about 50, let's say in round terms, countries. So the degree of let's say, accuracy as indicators of worldwide activity slightly changes. Now, you have, I think, pretty complete press release, and you have infographics. So just allow me, if I may, to make 4 comments of a general nature. And to try to change the story slightly from preceding years, because there's a certain consistency actually in the story, let me start by saying that I think these statistics for these systems indicate really that the digital age is well and truly here, and we see the importance of digital technology, computer technology more generally reflected, the growing importance reflected in all these statistics. So let me give you a few indications of why I would say that. The first is, if you look at the top applicants for international patent applications, the first 3 are telecoms. Telecom giants, namely Huawei of China, Qualcomm of the US, of the United States, and ZTE of China. So I think that's one area where we can observe that. Then I think another area where we can see it is if you were to go to our Madrid system for trademarks, you see that where trademarks for the classes of goods and services for which trademarks are registered, So what are they going to use the trademark on? You will see that computer hardware and software is the most popular class in international trademark registrations. It accounts for about 9% of the total of international trademark registrations. And again, if you were to go to the design system, you will see, once again, what are the designs for, and you'll see recording and communication equipment was the fastest growing in the total applications. It grew by about 40% last year. So I think there are several indications that digital technology is and the digital environment is well reflected as an area of great importance and growth in the intellectual property system worldwide. Second general comment, if I may, is that again, these systems have performed very well, and in fact better than the economy worldwide as a general rule. So international patent applications grew by 4.5% last year. Interestingly, the 5th consecutive year of growth, so we are, from the point of view of the global financial crisis, in this particular field, well out of it, as you see. Madrid filings grew by 2.3%. It's not a large number, but it's the 5th, again, consecutive year of growth. In the case of designs, the number of applications actually went down slightly, but you can file an application covering more than one design. In fact, you can file it covering 50 designs, and the number of designs covered in the applications actually increased. I think a greater maturity of the systems and a greater geographical reach, because I mentioned at the outset that the systems have differential memberships, but in the case of the design system, we see that last year the Republic of Korea and early this year Japan and the United States both joined that system, so we'll see that system become a better indicator in the future, and we'll see it grow in consequence as well. A next message I'd say is consistently with previous years, we see the same trend in the changing geography of, in particular, I would say, the production of technology as measured by international patent applications. So China grew by 18% last year. And if you look at the top filers, and that's consistent with what's been happening in recent years, and if you look at the top filing countries, countries of origin, you see United States as number 1, 57,000 in round terms, international patent applications. Japan number 2, 43,000 in round terms. China number 3, 21. Oh, I'm giving you the wrong figures, sorry. I'm giving you 2013. United States 61,000. Japan 42,000. China 25,000. Then you go to Germany 18,000. So that has been, as you know, a consistent trend. No sign of it abating, let's say. You will see that, as another indicator, China and Korea are the only two countries that have increased their share of total international patent in the total international patent applications for the last 5 years, 10 years, 5 years, last 5 years. So that's a consistent trend that you might like to dig out with, especially my colleagues. Then a last comment is perhaps that, well, I should say there, before I leave that point, for the first time, the United States became the top filer of international trademark applications. And that's really an historical, there's an historical explanation for that, which is that the United States is relatively recently into the Madrid system compared to the European countries, which have been, many of the European countries have been in it for 100 years. So you see a much greater take-up of the Madrid system by United States applicants, and is now the top filer. Last comment then perhaps is just to draw your attention to the presence of universities in the world of patents, and we see that's been a consistent presence, and it indicates a number of things really. I suppose it indicates that science and technology are coming closer together. Universities are very, very important players in the production of new technology these days. And we see some interesting statistics in this regard. As far as the biggest filer is concerned, it's the University of California with about 413 applications, and it's followed by MIT and the University of Texas system. 9 of the top filers from universities of international patent applications come from United States of America. The exception is the 10th filer, and that's Seoul National University. So those are some general comments that cover the area, but there's a lot of detail in it, and I haven't mentioned arbitration and mediation. Perhaps one comment there is that, as you know, the ICANN has been introducing new top-level domains, potentially 1,400. I think, Erik, 500 now online of new domains, that is to the right of the dot, like .com. And this is being reflected in our domain name disputes, but still at a fairly low level, about 4% of 3.9 exactly of our caseload. And the arbitration centre's caseload increased, like the other systems, with the exception of the Hague, again last year. So I'll finish at that point, and let's
Thank you.
see what people have to say.
Questions, please. Assis.
Assis Moreira, Valor Econômico, São Paulo. Countries like Brazil, Russia, and South Africa have important decline in terms of patent activities. Would you say this is because specifically the slowdown in the economy, or there is any other reason?
Carsten, why don't you have a shot at that?
Yeah, I think my answer would be that this is the most logical explanation. We certainly know that there has been a slowdown in the Brazilian economy and also in Russia. We also know from historical experience that patent filings do vary with the business cycle. So, from that perspective, I think that's perfectly consistent. In the case of India, what is interesting, India, of course, has been performing better than Russia and Brazil in particular, and we see, healthy growth in PCT filings from India. I should caution, though, that ultimately, we don't know what's driving filing from one year to the next, but it is certainly perfectly consistent with the movements in the business cycle.
My name is Ravi Kant. I represent Live Mint newspaper. First, what is the revenue you got out of all these three? Total revenue.
In round terms, it is 94% of our revenue, and our revenue is increasing as a consequence. But in round terms again, it's around about 370 million per year.
Okay.
So 94% comes from this. About 78% of the total revenue, not of the 94%, of the 100%, is coming from the PCT.
Okay. Can I follow it up? I just want to go back to, of course, you changed the entire pattern first to December figures and now. There seems to be some discrepancy.
Sure. Let me explain the difference in what we do. So one of the things we do is measure intellectual property activity in all countries of the world. Okay? So what's happening domestically in, for example, India? So you see that, again in round terms, India has filed about 1,400 international patent applications. In round terms, domestically, it received about 40,000, 40 to 50,000. Yeah, is that right? 40 to 50,000? 45,000 patent applications. Okay? So, in December, we were reporting on the 45,000. You know, how many each country around the world received, and what we're able to say about that. Here, we're looking at the internationalization of those applications. So how many of those applications, you know, passed through the international system because, essentially, the applicant is interested in more markets than just India. Of course, there are other ways of filing an application internationally than through our systems, because you could just file an Indian application and then file one in Bangladesh, independently of the PCT. But our systems offer a great many advantages, which is why they're so widely used. They're cost effective, they're, you know, and there are other value additions that I could go into. So today what we're doing is seeing how these systems that we run reflect global activity or internationalized activity of domestic activity.
So I come back to the same question again. In the month of December, when you actually spoke, you gave us an idea that these are primarily coming under PCT ambit. Isn't it so?
Our estimate is that of all patent applications filed internationally, that is, in more than one country.
That is true, but why do I come to PCT when I'm not seeking international? I come to PCT because I want my application to be sort of, you know, sent, So if I'm actually an Indian and I'm filing a patent with my, you know, sort of come up with, then why would I come to WIPO? I mean, how was this, how can, you know, these two?
Because most enterprises in the world have an ambition of being able to market their products or services.
That's true.
In more than one country. Now, if the basis of your product or service is an invention or some other form of intellectual property, then you will seek protection not only in your home country but in your export markets. And the moment you are seeking protection in your export markets, the simplest way to do it is through our systems.
So what is the consistency between what you said in December and now?
Well, can I ask you what the inconsistency is? I can't hear you, sorry, you're offline.
I'm still not able to grapple with the figures that you have given in the month of December and then the figures that you are now suggesting. In the month of December, we've been given an impression that these are primarily applications which are going to come under the so-called PCT. And now we find totally different figures, so I'm not able to...
I don't think so. What we said in December is this is what's happening around the world insofar as intellectual property is concerned. And we gave you figures for every single country in terms of the number of applications they receive. From that, you might be able to extrapolate certain trends. You might see that in most developed and emerging countries, the amount of activity domestically is rising. And then you go to see, well, to what extent are they using the international system? And these figures will tell you, give you a better indication of that.
Okay. Can I come back to again? Sorry if there are any other questions.
Go ahead. Let the interrogation proceed.
Yeah. I hope you are not judge, executioner, and the, you know, all three in one into one.
No, that's your role.
Sorry, you know, we understand the importance of the revenues that you get from China and the US, and we also understand that why these things are so important. But when you say India has actually done well, the growth is somewhat very, less than 2-3% or so, while you compare the growth of, say, China, Japan, or Korea for that matter. Why do you keep saying that India is doing well?
Well, first, I don't see the connection between the first part of your sentence, the revenue, and the second part of your statement. But let me pause on the first part first, on the revenue question. I think that we have a very good, if you like, business model at WIPO because we are deriving our revenue from providing services. And I've given you the rough breakdown of the percentages of that revenue. When you look at our expenditure side, we spend 21% of what we receive on development, capacity building. So I think it's a good partnership. It's a good business model. You know, we don't get 21% of our revenue from developing countries. We spend 21% of our revenue in developing countries exclusively on capacity building and development and technical assistance. So much for revenue. Now let me turn to the case of India. Okay, so it's a case to analyse and it's a case to look at. I think general comments, and I'll ask Carsten or Musaid to supplement it. General indications are that what we see is that intellectual property, attention is being paid to intellectual property in India. Okay? I think you can see that at the level of economic strategy. Make in India. You're not going to make in India unless you pay attention to technology and being competitive. And intellectual property has a role to play in that process. We also see it reflected in rising domestic activity. So there are, if you look at the December figures, increasing numbers of applications being received in India, which means that domestic applicants are filing, generally speaking, and I'm speaking in general terms, more, and more foreigners, if you like, are interested in the Indian market and are filing in India because they're interested in the Indian market. Then you come to the performance, the degree of maturity of the performance of Indian economy in terms of internationalising intellectual property, and you look at our figures and you see that it's in a different category from China. You see it's however also in a different category from Brazil because it's in between the two, although it's closer to Brazil than it is to China. So I think there are some things you can say about it, about India, and you do see an evolution. You can also add that India joined the Madrid system. Now, it wouldn't join the Madrid system, which is essentially for internationalising trademarks, unless it considered that it was in the interests of Indian industry to have an easier way of getting a passport into foreign markets for their products. That passport being the mark. So I think there are many signs of this.
Thank you, Francis. No, the only comment I would make in relation to the numbers that we published in December and the numbers we published today, there is quite a bit of consistency. The numbers we published in December relate to filings at national and regional IP offices in 2013. And you can imagine that many of the filings that are filed in those offices, then subsequently go to the international stage, and that is in principle what you should look at in 2014 under the PCT system. And we do see quite some correspondence. So in December we reported that in 2013 there was rapid growth in patenting, especially in China, but also the United States, and that's exactly what we are seeing happening in 2014 under the PCT system. Of course, there is no one-for-one correspondence. The conversion of domestic patent filings into international patent filings varies from country to country, and it also changes over time. But I think as far as the broad trends are concerned, there is quite a bit of consistency.
Okay. Can I? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. Somebody is awesome. Okay. China, for example, December and now. In December, if I got a feeling that you answered some 800,000 sort of patent applications. And around that time, there was an article also in the Economist magazine. No, you can ask a question if you want. If you don't have, is there anybody who wants? So in the month of December, we come back again because the Economist magazine at that time said that the quality of patents that are coming up from China are highly questionable. And then now I see out of 800,000, you are essentially talking of the international patents that have come about is 25,539. So does this mean that the overall, the large gap between what you had said in December and what we see in terms of international patent filings, do they talk anything about the quality of patents?
I don't think you can draw that conclusion. I think what you can say is that December showed us that the intellectual property office in the world that receives the most applications is China in the patent field. That's what, and also trademarks, also designs actually. That's the first thing it showed us. And then today we see that in terms of the internationalization of domestic applications, but applications by domestic applicants actually, China is number 3 in the world. And we also see that, consistent with a trend in previous years, the internationalization of domestic applications has increased by a percentage of about 18%, right? As it has in double-digit terms for the last I don't know how many years. In other words, a growing internationalization of their domestic applications, a growing internationalization, and that's a consistent trend. Why? Well, because Chinese enterprises are exporting, they're looking to export markets, they're looking to cover, to have protection for their technology in export markets, essentially, very simply put. So I think all of that is a fairly consistent picture. Now, it's true what you say, that there is a very large gap between the number domestically of domestic applications and the number of those that are internationalized. You know, you're talking in 6 figures and you're talking in 5 figures. In 6 figures in the case of one, 5 figures in the case of the other. I don't think you can extrapolate from that necessarily that means that all the domestic applications are of a low quality. I think what you can extrapolate maybe is there's a growing sensitivity to intellectual property use and the importance and the role of intellectual property, and there is growing penetration of export markets. And these two things certainly are happening. If you wanted to measure quality, I think you have to have a good metric for measuring it. And I don't see that metric about at the moment. And you know, if you think about that, if there was a good metric for determining the commercial viability of an invention, then you wouldn't need a venture capital industry.
Bryce Bashik with Bloomberg BNA. Thank you for your comments. Back in the States, patent assertion entities are a big issue, a big topic of discussion among lawmakers. Wondering if this is something that WIPO is monitoring, and if so, do you see this to be a growing challenge to the international patent system?
Well, we are watching what has happened. We don't have a prescribed role from our member states. You know, they haven't given us a mandate to do anything particular in this area. But naturally, it's a very important development in the use of the patent system and the way patents are used. So we do watch it. I would say that it is primarily an American phenomenon for various reasons that I'm sure you know and that we could explore, but it's primarily an American phenomenon. And that is not without consequence for the rest of the world, however, because most enterprises would also like to penetrate the American market. It's the largest, richest market in the world. So the existence of this phenomenon is naturally of interest to enterprises throughout the world.
Any further questions? Well, thank you all for coming, and again, appreciate the time from the busy day.